Sorry about that. I actually made a mistake in both of these. Both of these reasons aren't actually reflexive. I should have said symmetric. Okay, so now let's get to those last two proofs. So number 3 says, given that B is the midpoint of AC, find the length of AB. Justify each step. So this time we're not just finding X, we're wanting to find the length of AB. So first step is I want to create my 2-column proof of statements and reasons. Next, I want to start with what I'm given. So I'm given that B is the midpoint of AC, so I can write that first. So I'm given that. Now I need to look and see what else I'm given. Well, I have this diagram right here, and I see that AB is equal to 2x. And BC is equal to 4x minus 8. And so I want to find the length of AB. So I need to think about, again, what do we know about midpoint? And how can I use that to first find X, and then use that to substitute in to find AB? Well, if you recall from our previous unit, midpoint meant that it's in the exact middle, so that these two segments are actually congruent to each other. So I do recommend when you get into these that you go ahead and actually mark in your diagram what we know based on the information we're given. So since I knew that B is a midpoint, I know that there are really two congruent segments here. And so my first step here is stating, well, since B is the midpoint, AB is congruent to BC. My reason there is definition of midpoint. From our definition, we know that it creates two congruent statements. Now from here, it's really tempting to go ahead and say, okay, 2x is equal to 4x minus 8. However, we have this congruency symbol here. So really my next step is to say, well, since these two segments are congruent, that means that they're actually equal to one another. And I can say that from definition of congruence. All right, let's go ahead and write that out. Definition of congruence. Now from here, we can go just like what we did with the previous video. So now that I have AB is equal to BC, I can say, well, I can go ahead and substitute in what those values are. So 2x is equal to 4x minus 8. And that is by substitution. And now I need to solve. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. And there I'm using subtraction POE. And so I get that negative 2x is equal to negative 8. And there I just simplified. Divide by negative 2. And simplify. Okay, now I need to look at, again, what are we trying to do? Well, it says to find the length of AB. So I found what x is equal to. So now I actually need to substitute in my value for x in for AB. Well, AB is equal to 2x, so that means that AB is equal to 2 times 4. So again, my reason there is just substitution again. And so that means that AB is equal to 8. So that one is a little bit longer. We had a little bit more of some statements that we need to do. Definitely a common error I see is forgetting this AB is congruent to BC. If you go back to definition midpoint, it does say this. So make sure you add in that step. Okay, last one. So number 4 says to write a justification for each step. Given that angle A and angle B are supplementary and measure of angle A is 45 degrees, find measure of angle B. So I'm going to write what I'm given first. So I'm first given that angle A and angle B are supplementary. And I'm just going to do that for short. And I am given that information. What else am I given? I'm given that measure of angle A is 45 degrees. Okay, now I need to figure out how to find measure of angle B. So I need to think back. What does it mean for angle A and angle B to be supplementary? Well, if you recall from our previous unit, that means that those two angles add up to equal 180. So that means that measure of angle A plus measure of angle B is equal to 180. And what's my reason for that? Well, my reason for that is the definition of supplementary. So you'll notice that for a lot of these, we're just using definitions. So here I have my given that's supplementary. Usually the very next step, you're going to use the definition of supplementary. Here I had B as the midpoint. My very next step after the given information was definition of midpoint. That's going to be a really common thing that we see in all of the proofs that we do. Okay, now I want to find the measure of angle B. I know the measure of angle A is 45 degrees, so now I want to substitute in that value in for measure of angle A. So I'm going to have 45 plus measure of angle B is equal to 180. And again, all I did there was I did substitution. I substituted in that value. Now I can go ahead and solve for measure of angle B. So I'm going to subtract 45. So that's my subtraction POE. And so I get that the measure of angle B is equal to 135.